What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Dom and Pop DC Sports Talk Plus podcast. This week, we're going mostly national. We got to cover all the big stuff going on with franchise tagging, Lamar Jackson coming to Washington, D.C. There's been a big trade in the NFL draft, lots of good stuff. So stay tuned. We're breaking it all down for you. Here we go. Pop, how you doing, man? How you doing?
Doing good, son. Rumor has it you're airing out, feeling loose over there.
Boys are in the breeze. The boys are in the
Yeah,
breeze. It's
make
good
sure you
stuff.
check out. We got a special short coming for you all. You're not going to believe it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Well,
Dom's going to put on a fashion show. That's the teaser.
speaking of things you're not going to believe, I heard Lamar Jackson is coming to Washington, D.C. I heard it's
Woo!
happening. Confirmed. Confirmed. Check the title. It's not clickbait. Per sources, I am the source. Lamar Jackson coming to Washington, D.C. Sources, bro, trust me.
Well, this
No,
isn't
we're
even
just,
a source of controversy on the Dom and Pop show. We are both all in on going after Lamar.
yep,
Unfortunately, Ron Rivera and
ain't going to
company
happen.
don't appear to be. But although you hear these reports, I saw another one today saying maybe they're back in it. We'll see. I think a lot of it's going to come down to the ownership situation, obviously. Although, does Dan want to leave a little bit of a legacy? And he landed Lamar before he left, or does he not really want to leave and land Lamar? Never know.
Maybe Dan wants to leave a legacy. Maybe Dan wants to leave a little afangul to the rest of the league. Bring Lamar in, guarantee him $250 million, and then sell the team. Go with the PFT take on that one. Yeah. So obviously, if you guys have been living under a rock, or if you have more important things to do than follow NFL free agency, Lamar Jackson gets that franchise tag, non-exclusive tag, which is interesting. In terms of the Ravens, we both just said the Ravens, should he play under the tag, the Ravens are going to have to pay him about $32 million. And something I thought was interesting is now that he's under that non exclusive franchise tag, I think that kind of impacts negotiations a little bit now going forward with him and with some other teams, because I was watching an episode of Will Compton's podcast last night with Kirk Cousins on it. Bussin' with the Boys is the name of the podcast. Great podcast. And Kirk was talking about how when he was negotiating for contracts leaving Washington, basically the starting point for any negotiation, what his agent had said, was 2 franchise tags, because that was what was he was going to get hit with, was the franchise tag. So he wasn't even talking with anything over that. When you bring in the non-exclusive franchise tag, which is a little rare, I think Elway was the last time it was used. I've heard that tossed around. Don't quote me on that. Um, Now that number comes down a little bit, which I think is interesting. Is he's only slated to get $32 million next year, which when you look at Daniel Jones getting north of 40, when you look at Deshaun Watson getting like 46, 45, something like that. I mean, just insane. Aaron Rodgers, insane numbers. You figure Lamar should be making that, if not more. So I think it's really interesting. Pop, you have any thoughts on that? Where do you think he's going to end up? Let's hit the Lamar thing.
I mean, I was breaking it down in detail with our Ravens insider who is distraught. He's going
God
through a
bless him.
lot of emotion. We're thinking about you. We just want you to know we are definitely thinking about you. Um, and yeah, it's pretty interesting with the non-exclusive, and also the fact that what teams really have the cash to sign him. Because he was explaining to me that you actually have to put the money in escrow, and obviously you have to have the salary cap space. So if he's going to go for a $40 million
Yeah.
contract or a $45 million contract, you got to set the cash aside and you got to free up salary cap space to do it.
Yeah.
And, it's not necessarily an easy thing for a team out there to make happen. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think if you're the Ravens, obviously you've prepared yourself for the likelihood that he'll be gone if you're willing to put that non-exclusive tag on him. You're
Yeah.
preparing yourself for that likelihood. You get 2 first round picks in exchange. It's going to be interesting. It's been kind of uh, slow in terms of the interest.
Yeah.
There's rumors, is there collusion going on? Owners are upset about the Deshaun Watson contract. Feels like that the Browns, overshot the market there, especially with all the guaranteed money, and they want to kind of bring it back in. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think in terms of suitors, it's teams that you hear about, teams like Miami, the Jets, who seem to be in the conversation for every available quarterback, including Aaron Rodgers. I heard the
Yeah.
Lions mentioned, but another one, which is we're going to get into in a minute, that's kind of emerging after the Carolina trade, is Indy. Indy sits at 4 in the draft. Are they going to be able to get the quarterback that they really want with the 4th pick? And now are they suddenly in the Lamar sweepstakes trying to steal him from a division rival? Be interesting.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I think you touched on a couple places that I think would be really good fits for him. I think Indy had a really tough year last year. I actually don't think they're that bad of a team. I don't think they're a 4-13 team. I think they had really tough breaks with
They were just missing Carson Wentz. That was their problem.
they were missing Carson Wentz. Their quarterback situation obviously, blew up, and they had really tough breaks with injuries across the board with Jonathan Taylor, of course, and then their defense was kind of banged up. But they have half decent pieces in Indy to turn things around faster than you think. Detroit, in my opinion, is by far and away the sexiest landing spot for Lamar. I think Lamar in Detroit, we're talking about they can shore up that offensive line a little bit, which,
Sexier than Miami?
no, not the Miami, but Miami is actually out of contention because unfortunately you have to own 2 first round draft picks, and because of the tanking scandal, Miami doesn't have a first rounder this year. They've been robbed of it. The
So
NFL
you
took it
actually
away.
have to have a first round pick in this year and next year's draft in order to be eligible?
I believe so, yeah. It's something
Are
along
you
those
sure about
lines.
that?
I'm pretty sure that Miami is out of the question. Now, I don't know if there's other ways that they can make that work. I'm sure their
Yeah,
lawyers are hard at work, but
acquire a pick
another
somehow.
another another reason I'm pretty sure Miami is out of the question is they just picked up Tua's 5th-year option, and they just guaranteed him another $30 million, damn near, like 20, 24, 23, something like that. I guess 20 is closer. So you're not doing that if you're planning on going to get Lamar. You're just not. That's so. I think Miami. I mean, you've heard how highly Mike McDaniel has spoke of Tua, and they love him down there. They just are hoping that the concussions was more of a freak thing this year and he can stay healthy. But I don't think Lamar's headed anywhere towards Miami. But I think Detroit would be the sexiest pick because so the pick that you would give up is actually the pick that was assigned to you, not any picks that you could have gotten in the trade. So we know Detroit is drafting number 6, but that's actually a result of the Stafford trade from the Rams. So they'd actually be giving up that number 18 pick,
Right.
which that means Detroit would have Lamar Jackson and the number
6th pick
6
in the
overall
draft.
pick. And they've got DeAndre Swift, great running back, a little bit of injuries last year. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who in my opinion is a fringe top 10, definitely top 12 wide receiver in the NFL, just an absolute beast that doesn't get enough credit because he plays in Detroit. They've got, I think Goff is towards the end of his contract extension, so they wouldn't be losing all that much if they got rid of him. Don't quote me on that, but I don't think he's definitely not on any long term money. Um, and that defensive line is terrifying.
Well, I guess it's a good spot. Maybe not that they have that much control over the situation, but for the Ravens too to get them out of the conference. I
Yeah,
guess the next question though, like I don't really want to have full breakdown of the Detroit roster. I love you, son. But the next question is, and I think we've already answered it: should the Commanders go all in to get Lamar?
100%.
Yeah,
100%. I think when you talk about the things that I was highlighting about Detroit, I think we have all of that and better. Um, Great weapons on the offensive side of the ball. We've got, there's some back and forth about the enemy, but you got to assume the guy that's been standing next to Patrick Mahomes for 5 years gets a talent like Lamar Jackson, things are going to look pretty decent offensively.
Yeah, it creates
Um,
some risk, obviously, because you're giving up that first round pick. So, in terms of adding that other depth to your roster, it's going to create challenges with the salary cap. Now we know we need to build that offensive line. We know we got some needs at corner and linebacker, and it can create some challenges there in terms of free agency. You really want to build on the draft. But I agree. I think,
yeah,
with a talent like that and the foundation that we already have on the team that's coming back, I'm not sure what they need to do to create cap space. Maybe you have to trade a Deron Payne in order to make the room, which wouldn't be great. But regardless, I think to get a talent like that at 26 years old, former MVP, and maybe a hot take. I don't necessarily think the Ravens have handled Lamar optimally. They've seemed to have put him in a box or put their offense in a box, as being a running team. They don't have a lot of weapons outside of the run game, and usually they have a great tight end. I think he's got more ability in the pass game, especially with his ability to run play action, get outside the pocket. And, you've always got to have that, man to man defense with an 11th defender guarding Lamar. That creates openings in the passing game. And I think
yeah,
he's more than capable of taking advantage of that. So I kind of feel like the Ravens have handicapped him a bit in terms of what they've decided has to be the offensive style. And yeah, I'd love to see the Commanders go after it. I don't, it might completely break our Ravens insider's heart if that happened. We'd have to nurse him back, but I think we could do it. We'd get him a number 8, nice, clean, like you got on there. Instead of number 17 jersey, we get him a nice, clean number 8 Commanders jersey. He'll
yeah,
be all right.
yep, yeah. I mean, in terms of like who would win the most games with Lamar Jackson at quarterback, I think out of any of the potential suitors, it's probably between us and the Jets, in my opinion. Detroit maybe is a third option, but I think we'd be very good with Lamar Jackson. Not saying much. I mean, I think every football team would be very good with Lamar
Do you
Jackson,
think
but I
there's
think
any chance he's back in Baltimore?
so. Here's where I'm conflicted. My whole life, being a Commanders fan and growing up in an area that's half Baltimore, half Washington, I've been tortured by the Ravens always making really great, smart front office decisions and running a really good franchise. So I wonder, do they know something about the market that Lamar doesn't? When they give him that non-exclusive tag and they say, "Go out there with your injuries and with some of your limitations as a pocket passer," that the world is saying I don't necessarily agree with, but go see, go see what your value really is, and maybe they know something that Lamar doesn't, and maybe he does end up back. But I don't think. I almost wonder if Lamar would even hold out. Watson held out for a year. I
I
wonder
think
if
if he
Lamar would even
signs
hold
with
out.
I think if he signs with somebody, I still wonder as time goes on and the draft hits and then teams get more desperate. I still kind of feel like somebody's going to get stupid. And I think once somebody gets stupid and maybe that's a poor choice of words, but I mean in terms of just big money.
Reckless maybe is
Big
the
money. It
better.
could be the Commanders with new ownership. Who knows? I think it's going to be prohibitive for the Ravens at that point, especially staring 2 first round draft picks in the face
Yeah,
to go. But it brings up the question for another pod: what will be next at quarterback for our neighbors up north? But there's other big
definitely.
news in the NFL we should get into.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's start. Obviously, this is has a big impact on the Lamar situation. Carolina trades with the Chicago Bears for the number one overall pick. So the Bears trade from number one back to I think it was what number nine where Carolina's picking. Um, and they'll also receive DJ Moore, a late second round pick, pick number 61, a 2024, so next year, first overall pick, and a 2025 second overall pick. So, Pop, I mean, what do you think about that? Obviously, Justin Fields is probably pretty excited about that trade. He's got
Yeah,
himself an alpha wide receiver number one. I think DJ Moore was a Terp, maybe.
absolutely. He a
So
Terp.
yeah, got that in my brain. So he's got all of a sudden the Bears went to having a half decent wide receiver group now with DJ Moore out there. Should be exciting to see what they can do, and they've loaded up on picks. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean DJ Moore is a first
The
round
dog.
talent, excellent player, and so it's like another first round pick, honestly, as
Yeah,
part of that trade. I like it for the Bears. I mean, I don't know. It's one of those. Maybe I like it for both teams in a way. I
yeah,
kind of understand why Carolina did it. Gave up a lot. I feel like those kind of trades hardly ever work out for the team that gives up all those picks. And I like it
yeah,
for the Bears because if you got Justin Fields, he's in your building. If you got a good feeling about him, these first round draft picks, as much as they may look like on great on paper, they all got question marks. Bryce Young, as much as everybody likes him, look at the questions around his size, and there's probably questions about each of the other guys. So why not go with the guy that you've got? He's in your building, he's developing under your system, and then they just gave their team a huge boost in terms of rebuild with the picks. And then you
yeah.
definitely needed that receiver, right? That dynamic receiver. So I think it's a great get for the Bears, but I can understand why Carolina did it.
Yeah, I mean, we're scarred in Washington from the trade with RG3, of course, and unfortunately, it really looked like that was going to work for a second, and it didn't. We spent big to go move up to that number two overall pick. I think it was three first rounders in total. And you can see, I mean, look at Los Angeles, look at Denver. I mean, Denver's 4-13, 5-12, somewhere in that range. They don't have a first round pick this year. Los Angeles 5-12, they don't have a first round pick this year, and they got veteran guys. So it's not even like they have young guys that could develop. So it is a lot of risk in that move. But I agree with you. I think it's a situation where both teams win. You look at Carolina; they've got about $22 million in cap space, and they've got a solid roster. I mean, this is a team that was the the laughing stock of the NFL for the start of the season. I mean, they were horrible, terrible team, and turned it around pretty quickly. And obviously, they were even competing for the division. That division's pretty wide open. So you wonder, you get a young quarterback in there, you've got lots of money to spend in cap space, and I know they still have some picks kicking around from that McCaffrey trade as well. Um, so it's not all bad for Carolina. I think they were one of the few teams that's kind of uniquely positioned to go ahead and make this swing. And when you're looking at Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, even the boy Anthony Richardson, all of a sudden creeping into that conversation, there's no doubt some potentially elite talent in this draft at quarterback. You might not have the Joe Burrow like absolute alpha dog number one quarterback, but I think you can make an argument that any of those three are really strong franchise pieces. So, and Chicago, obviously, you look at a team that's just so depleted talent wise across the board. They just need more resources right now. So I think it was a great move for them. What I kind of wanted to see Chicago do was trade back to number two with Houston, and then the day of the draft trade that pick too. I thought that would have been kind of cool and maybe maximize on some value there. But maybe I've been playing too much franchise mode in Madden as well. Um, I know it's obviously harder than that, but yeah, it should be exciting. I'm really, really excited to see the boy Justin Fields. Um, been rooting for him since he came into the league. I was hoping he was going to fall to 15 when we were there, and he didn't. The Bears jumped up and snagged him. I think otherwise he would have. Uh, and so I'm excited to see him with a real wide receiver out there. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
word is that the
overall it's a cool
Carolina is
trade.
still evaluating the top quarterbacks and haven't really locked in on anyone yet. They really liked Levi and the last, or how do you say it? Is it Levi Levis?
Levi's or Levis, something. I don't care because I don't want to draft him. I don't want to touch them.
Yeah,
So I don't. I'm not
uh,
learning his name.
Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. I guess Bryce Young is the still kind of the favorite to go
The
first.
bell
I
of the
think
ball. Yeah.
overall, but probably comes down between him and C.J. Stroud. But yeah, I mean, never a dull moment in the NFL. Good for the
Nope.
podcast, but
Yep.
um, we'll see what happens. We'll see how that develops.
Yeah.
So
It should be interesting. I think overall it's hard to pick a winner because we got to see. What does Justin Fields turn into? What does Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, or whoever they do pick turn into? I've tapped in with some. I have a few, not quite inside sources, but definitely NFL adjacent sources, and I've tapped in with them, and it's all split. Nobody's really got their mind made up yet. It's just too early. I've one guy thinks it's going to be Stroud. I it's been everybody's been saying Bryce Young for forever, and then Richardson. Obviously, that wild card. Do you take the swing for the elite talent? But so that's that on the trade. It should be interesting to see. I'm looking at this Arizona at number 3, and I'm going, why the hell don't they trade? Maybe a trade with Vegas there would make a lot of sense. Vegas can go up, get their quarterback. Arizona can go up and get ahead of Indianapolis, who's going to be looking for a quarterback there at number 4. Arizona can get a haul. Obviously, they're way too invested in Kyler Murray to make any moves. Um, but it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a really fun, probably my favorite part of doing this pod in the off season is the NFL draft. It's just so fun to get into it and analyze everybody, and it makes what used to be a total snooze fest for me. Honestly, it makes it very exciting and a lot of fun. So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to doing some more in-depth draft breakdowns as we get closer. But there's been some other already established NFL talent big moves that have happened in the last week. So let's go ahead and touch on those real quick. We have Derek Carr going to the Saints. That should be pretty interesting. He's coming off of a pretty down year out in Vegas, got ran out of town, essentially. And now he's going to go play down in New Orleans with what is a pretty solid roster down there, minus the quarterback position. What do you think about that, Pop?
Yeah, I like Derek Carr, and makes a lot of sense, I think, for the Saints. And yeah,
Yep.
maybe Jameis becomes a commander as a result of this. Do they end up cutting Jameis and
So
freeing him
actually,
up?
I heard something about that. So apparently, the way Jameis's deal is set up, it's actually cheaper for them to keep him and restructure than it is for them to cut him. So I think he's going to end up staying around there.
Stay as a
Um,
backup.
Unfortunately for both Jameis and for Washington, I love Jameis, and I think it's hard to look at some of these guys that are starting around the NFL and say, how is Jameis Winston not better than one of these guys? I mean, I know he kind of comes with a
I
lot.
seem to have some good moments down there with the Saints, and certainly,
Yeah,
had some good moments with Tampa. So I agree, but I think he'd be kind of that good option to come in and compete. Like they seem
yeah.
that they want to do with a vet. So
I might have to
yeah,
buy his jersey if he came to DC. Like that would be one of those that just like I have to stamp I was there for the Jameis Winston to DC era. Like I might have to just have that. Now we've got the next biggest news. God, I'm so sick of this guy. Aaron Rodgers, yet again, another off season of Aaron Rodgers, making it all about him. Thank God they came out and they said he's not going in the NFC. Thank God. That's the best thing that could have possibly happened to this fan base is not even have to think about it. I don't want that guy anywhere near my team personally. I know he's super talented, but I'm just so sick of the darkness retreats and the this, that, and the other. And I don't like the thing that he does where he's like, oh, it's all the media, but he's always drawing attention to himself and he's blaming it on everybody else, but he's always drawing attention to himself and it drives me nuts.
he's an
So
interesting dude, that's for sure. Yeah, I
that,
wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want any part of Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's turning 40.
yeah,
Like, what are we doing, right? I mean,
yeah,
a guy that you end up having to pay that kind of money for 1 or 2 years, and it would be all about him. No, 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 thank you. But it
and look
does
at
it does some pretty interesting comments from former Washington Redskin legend, or I don't know about legend, but really good safety for the Washington Redskins Super Bowl teams, Mark Murphy, um, who is now a president with the Packers, or key front office guy there, and he said that he is indicating all indications are the Packers are ready to move on.
yeah,
So, I was also getting in that debate. I mean, they've got Jordan Love. They must like Jordan Love. Some
you'd
people
hope.
think that he isn't any good, but it's following the same pattern, that they did with Brett Favre when they drafted Aaron Rodgers, right? They kept him around for a few years and then they decided, was ready to move on. And, although I think he actually retired initially and then ended up signing with the Jets, if I remember that right. But
Yeah,
it's pretty, it's pretty. His direct quote was, they asked him about him going to the Jets, and he goes, "I mean, unless if things don't work out the way we would want them, yeah." meaning that, you know, they don't necessarily want Aaron Rodgers back, which is pretty strong words, right? So
Yeah,
it's that's interesting. I mean, I don't know. He's an interesting case. Great, still a great player, still a top five quarterback in the league.
yeah,
You know, I don't think he's a bad guy in the locker room or anything. But question is, what do you have to give up to give him? And that's the
yeah.
interesting thing there.
Yeah, I'm sure, I'm sure he's a decent person. I don't really have anything personally against Aaron Rodgers, no matter how much it may have sounded like it in that first rant there. I'm just so sick of the saga because every year it's just so much drama around it, and
Yeah,
I'm ready for it to just be over, and I'm sure to an extent he is as well. Um, I think it's another situation where it could be very mutually beneficial. Green Bay obviously is a decent roster, but they have some holes, and they have some holes that maybe we weren't aware of at the beginning of the year that they need to patch up. So maybe they get some assets from the Jets and they can go make some moves to fill out some wide receivers, fill out that offensive line a little bit. They had some injuries last year with Bakhtiari, some other key players there. Shore up that defense a touch, but they definitely have like some flashes and some key pieces that look good on that roster that if Jordan Love can come in and ball out, he could be, you know, that team could get back to relevance very quick. And then obviously you look at the Jets who are just absolute lockdown defense, one of the best defenses in the NFL. You can make a conversation for the best. Um, and just couldn't win games because they couldn't score more than 10 points last year because they were just so abysmal at the quarterback
right.
position. Um, so obviously, Aaron Rodgers would hopefully be a step up there. I think there's no doubt that Rodgers can still ball. It's just like, is his head in it or not? He still physically can do it, but where is his head at? So that's obviously the big question mark. Maybe the Jets are looking at it. A lot of talk of like your championship window. Maybe the Jets are saying, "Hey, we've got Sauce Gardner on a rookie deal. We've got Garrett Wilson on a rookie deal. We've got some of our key offensive line pieces on a rookie deal. Brees Hall on a rookie deal. Let's attack this championship window while we have it, and let's see if we can go get a Super Bowl in the next couple of years with Rodgers, and then figure it out after that." So I'd like to see it happen. I want to see Jordan Love get his shot. To everybody who's skeptical of Jordan Love, like read a history book. This is what the Packers do. Rodgers sat for 5 years behind Favre before he started. Love's only sat for 3. So if they're ready to move on to Love, he's gonna be good enough. Trust me. If they're ready to move on from Rodgers, I think it's as close to a sure thing as you can have with a new quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah,
They're
I
prepared.
don't think we've
They're
seen
ready.
enough. I don't think we've seen enough to judge, and he's they're the ones that see him in the building, and I kind of laugh a little bit at people that see guys play one or two games and
It's just
are like,
ignorant.
oh, he sucks, like you don't know that, so they're seeing him more often than anyone else, and they must think that
Yep.
that's the better option for him right now. So
And just look at the track record. I mean, that's what they do in Green Bay. They have consistent Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and that's what they do. So I'm excited to see a new quarterback in Green Bay, and I think it's just always a good thing for the NFL to have an exciting new quarterback situation up there, and hopefully a future great in Jordan Love. So otherwise, let's check in on a little bit of that Commanders free agency buzz. This is a buzz-free free agent season, in my opinion, with the Commanders. But just a couple quick names, maybe we can touch on. What do you think, Pop?
it sounds good.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
I think there's a couple of interesting notes there. You went off a little bit on the order there, so you threw me off a little bit. wasn't quite prepared, but that's okay, son. I love
I'm
you.
reading this thing
Um,
vertically, but that's fine. Rogers to the Jets,
what's
Commanders free
next on
agents,
there?
Commanders free agency
You
buzz
didn't
is the
get the new
literal
one.
next bullet point. That
You
is the
didn't get
newest one
the
I have.
all right.
You didn't send the new one, maybe. We'll include a little screenshot.
All right. In terms of salary cap room, the Washington has about 16 million in the cap space, so they freed up 26 million with dropping Wentz, but then they locked up Duran playing on the franchise tag, which is about 19 million. So, not a ton of room to work with there, right?
Yeah,
Um, But lots of needs. I mean, linebackers a need, offensive line, of course, is a need. We talked about corner being a need. I don't know in terms of any buzz, in terms of names. They're saying that there's it's a good linebacker class in terms of free agency.
Yeah,
Um,
there is.
there's some interesting options in terms of offensive line. Orlando Brown is out there, although he's would probably take 20 million a year. So, do
It's
you
not
have cap
happening.
space? And that cap situation is just quickly talks to you about the whole Lamar situation for the Commanders. Makes it really difficult for them to free up the kind of money they would need to get Lamar. I don't know how practical that is.
Yeah.
Um, but then also they got to consider who they want as that veteran quarterback. So yeah, it's interesting. What are you hearing? Any particular names or buzz?
Three names that I'm interested in. Andrew Wiley, Kansas City offensive lineman. We need all five offensive linemen, so I don't really care uh, where he ends up. I think he's tackle converted to guard, but they move him around on the right side of the line. That's fine. We don't have anybody on the right side of the line that is a guarantee stud, anyways. So happy to bring him in. He won't be that expensive. He is a free agent. Another interesting one is Ben Jones, center from Tennessee, and they just cut him, Pro Bowler, had some concussion issues. He's a little bit later on in his career, and I think that just kind of fits the model of what Ron seems to look for on the offensive line. And when you're looking at, we have 8 draft picks this year, so we can go young and cheap later in the draft and maybe get somebody a little bit older, veteran to start right now. That will be solid, and durability is the only question I have. But leading up until those concussion issues this year, he was super durable. So Ben Jones at center would be another one that I would be interested in. In terms of big names, the biggest name that I would be interested in would be Levante David at linebacker. Don't think that's going to happen because basically the reason why he's looking to leave Tampa is he said he wants to stay there, but he also wants to check out the free agency market and see what's out there for him, which is code for I want to get paid. And I don't think with Holcomb and Jamin Davis and the way they played last year, I just don't think we're in the mood to really pay up a linebacker. But he is older, and you wonder is he towards the back end of his career? What's the market looking like for him? And can he come in and be that kind of mentor figure for someone like Jamin Davis? Can he be the like locker room guy, somebody that's been there, has led what was that Bucks defense, not last year, but the couple of years before that was vicious, and he was the centerpiece of that. So that's an interesting one. But that's pretty much, I mean, like we said, all the buzz this year is on ownership. So we're not going to have much free agency buzz until that's sorted out. But there you go. So veteran linebackers and veteran offensive linemen is what we're excited about in DC this year.
And to see what they do in the draft, I think that'll
And to
be
see what they do with the draft
a
and
lot of
Lamar
intrigue
Jackson,
there.
because obviously all of our cap space is going to be spent on Lamar Jackson. So not much we can do here.
A Dom
Um,
guarantee.
so speaking of cap space, what do you say we move on? I got a two-pronged Kickots of the week for you here. What do you say?
Let's do it.
So prong number one got to be Kickots of the week to the Gmail app on my iPhone for not refreshing in time and making me look like an ass here with the outline. I was grilling Pop talking about screenshots. The app didn't refresh. That's my bad, Alan. I got to take accountability. It's my staff, but at the end of the day, my staff did let me down here on this Gmail app. So that's first Kickots. Second Kickots has
I mean,
got to go.
we talked about adding it to the agenda in our prep work before the show, but it's okay.
Look,
I
man, I'm
know.
not
You're
making
getting old,
excuses.
man. Your memory isn't what it used to be.
I'm not making excuses. I'm a little under the weather today. I'm not
All
making
right.
excuses. I
All right,
just wanted
Michael.
to just want everybody to be aware. This is my flu game pod. We got Ken Kotz has got to go to the New York Giants, signing Daniel Jones, $40 million a year. Essentially, I think it's a 2-year deal loaded with a lot of incentives that could end up being 4 years. But they're at least paying him $40 million this year and next year. I know for sure. Crazy. And then they obviously hit Saquon Barkley with the franchise tag. Uh, so yeah, Kikatz has got to be Daniel Jones
That's
getting
a ton of
paid
money, right, on two
$40 million.
players, right?
Yeah,
I kind of like it as as a Commanders fan and not wanting the
Yeah,
Giants to do well. It feels like they're tying up a lot of cap space on those two guys, and Saquon's a great player, but that's a lot of money on you know two people, and it might limit the amount of talent they can add. I think Daniel Jones had a good year. I've always liked him. He seems to be a commander killer. Always plays his best football against us.
yeah.
Um, it's a tough situation you get in. I don't know whether the market was there somebody else out there really willing to sign him for 40 mil a year. I can't think of a name,
But
but
that's the threat, right? Is like if we let this guy who has been, Daniel Jones has been the butt of every joke in the NFL, but to his credit, one thing he has been is reliable, durable. He can run a little bit, and he's shown he's consistent. He's shown some consistency this year. And you say, can this guy hit? Can we let him hit free agency when he's at
yeah.
least the best availability? The best ability is availability, and maybe he goes to a more desirable situation. We got to lock
Well,
him up. We talk about rosters in bad situations, and I think New York is one of them. So I'm very interested to see what they can do tying up all this money in Daniel Jones. I think it backfires, but go ahead, Pop. Sorry, I cut you off there.
no, it's cool. I mean, I think I don't think we need to. I'm hoping you're not ready to do a deep dive on the Giants roster now.
No,
Is that
that
the
was all
case?
I had
Okay.
to say. That was all I had to say. It's not a
But
deep dive every time I start saying something.
no,
That
it's all
was
right. All good.
a little
No,
bit of
I
insight.
mean it. Nah, you always have great insight. Yeah, it's interesting. They're in a tough spot. Yeah, I get them wanting to keep rolling with Daniel Jones. I do understand that. Um, but it just seems like an awful lot to invest in two players. I
Yeah,
obviously hope it crashes and burns. It's crazy what that quarterback market is doing at this point. But I
yeah.
mean, for him to be one of the top paid quarterbacks in the league, given that he's probably a 15 to 20 guy, I don't know. I like
It's
it.
nuts.
As a
It's nuts.
Commanders
Yeah.
fan, I like it.
So do you think Ron Rivera has been plotting this whole time where we're intentionally tanking against the Giants to make Daniel Jones look good? And then I think he sent him a highlight reel. He
Absolutely.
sent his agent. He said, "Hey, just play the Washington tapes. Daniel Jones balling against play that in the negotiations." I
Ron
think
is
that's
always scheming, always in the lab, always working that psychological warfare against his NFC East rivals. Absolutely. I give him all the
chess, not
credit.
checkers.
Give him
Ron
all the
Rivera
credit for
is
this.
playing. He's playing chess. I think that's what you guys are missing here. He's been
I mean, if he could
intentionally
just
taking.
stop that challenge flag from getting stuck in his belt, we'd be
Yeah,
all right.
exactly. Well, see, that's why he's actually, he pulls that challenge flag errantly because he wants the refs to make bad calls. That's the whole point. He tries to screw over the opponent later in the game. Ron's ahead of all of this. Is the point here? But yeah, so kickouts has got to go to that. The Saquon thing, it's hard to pay a running back in the NFL, unfortunately. It's just nature of the position. So I'm not even mad at them tagging him. I think that's
And
probably
even
the right
someone
move.
that's not exactly healthy all the time, right? He seems to get even after the major knee injury, seems to get nicked up. But hey,
I'm
anytime that Kotz is tied to one of our NFC East rivals, I'm liking it. So
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, it's always a good thing. And, hopefully we can get a few more kick-Kotzes. Where's our Cowboys kick-Kots coming up? We need one of those. I know Mike McCarthy's gotta be opening his mouth sooner rather than later. So we'll see. We'll see how this all pans out. This is exciting. It's a fun time of the year.
a
Fun
lot
time
going
of the
on.
year. This is
That's
speculation
why
season.
we start with a 20-minute pod outline and we go 40
Yep.
just for the people.
It's speculation season, it's lying season, and we are here to break it all down for you. Guys, don't forget Lamar Jackson to Washington, D.C. He's on the way. He's on the way. He's already packed his bags. He's been having lunch at Ben's Chili Bowl. Let's wrap this thing up. Pop, thank you for another great podcast. I've been Dom.
Thank you, son. This is Pop.
Love me,
Thanks for another
baby.
great one, guys.
Oh.